we'll never agree on. Oh, thanks.
We're
Yeah.
recording it.
Okay. So there are issues that we'll never agree on possibly, but there's so much work that we could do together, regardless of party and regardless if you live in the city or if you live out in the country. And so those issues have been proven to me that my theory was right. Because when Measure 107, which amended our Constitution to allow us to finally have limits, we're one of 5 states that have no limits whatsoever. And you can see that with every governor's race, just keeps going insane. So my point is that campaign finance reform is one of those issues that'll bring us together. Of course, we're going to differ on how to do that, what the limits should be, which groups should not be allowed, like corporations, to donate. So I'm role modeling it during our campaign by not accepting corporate money or PAC money, which includes union money. We are going to accept tons of union members' money because we're not anti-union, but we just want them to speak with their dollars just like the rest of us. And so it's my first time speaking with a mask on. So, and then we have set a limit of 1,000 because 10 different states around the country have $1,000 limit. Now, I have some family and a couple of friends that have 6-figure incomes that can do that, but the majority of our donations are 100 or less. So that's the way it is. So we're obviously, we're not going to have the millions like friends of Melinda Gates and friends of Phil Knight. So, but we're not afraid of that because we're doing this. We're traveling to every county. We're building a grassroots organization, and there's a sign up in the back if you want to sign up, or you can sign up virtually too. So that's the heart of our campaign, is unifying Oregonians so we can get things done, right? And when you recognize that campaign finance reform usually affects almost every issue, including healthcare, right? With big pharma money, big insurance money, because they're non-discriminatory. They give it to both sides of the aisles. And the chair of the health committee in Salem gets the biggest amount, no matter which party. And every member on that committee gets huge checks too. So, and the way Salem works, I've learned, is that actually to get a chair position in Salem, even in the Democratic Party, it depends on how much you raise. To be on the budget committee, you have to be one of the highest fundraisers in Salem. So that needs to change, and we can do that when we finally set some limits. So the other issues are, I tie these together, health and housing, because both of them are getting unaffordable. And you know, it's ironic coming from a woodworking background that hearing the mantra, we're the timber capital of the world, but we have 15,000 people living on the street. So that just really gets me. I mean, like others have said, it's a moral issue. And we have a plan for that. I'm sounding like Elizabeth Warren now, but you're going to hear that we're one of the only candidates, when you go to their webpage, that has a platform button. It's because I was the secretary of the party, maybe. We went to all those tedious platform convention meetings. But it's important that we stand for something and that we have solutions. That's the other thing. That's why our slogan is solutions, not politics. Because regardless of party, regardless of urban, rural, we want solutions. And that's why we're here. We want to solve some problems. And so then I take us to wildfires, another common issue that both parties want to solve. Carbon reform is another issue. Even if they're reluctant to admit it, they're seeing droughts, they're seeing wildfires, and that heat dome we had in June killed 600 people. And most of them were in British Columbia, which you would never think that British Columbia would be dying from climate chaos. So these are some of the core issues. And Devin, if I skip an issue, the young person there in the middle is my scheduler, and he can help me remember my talking points. But so you see where we're coming from. We're trying to get big money out of politics so we can get stuff done. And so I want to do that kind of an introduction so that we can take your questions. So maybe they should have the mic if they have questions.
I don't know if that mic is working.
Yeah. Maybe the batteries, but I can hear you too. And hopefully the folks I can repeat the question.
So have we actually started the meeting now?
I guess I did, and it's just 7 o'clock. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We're starting the meeting, and the meeting is going to be a little bit different this month because we're going to have Patrick speak first. Then we're going to do about 15 minutes of business, and then Tina Kotek is going to be
Speaker,
here
yeah.
via Zoom.
Yeah,
So,
great. Yeah.
and
And we're going to stay for that.
okay, but I'm going to ask you not to ask questions.
I won't,
Okay.
but I'm going to give you a few before I leave, and then I'm going to stay and hear the answers.
Okay, yeah, because it's not a debate.
No.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right, so
And-
with that, Patrick Starnes.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Dorothy. Thank all of you that worked to make this happen. And like I said, it's my first time speaking with a mask on. And it's my first.
You can take the mask off.
Is that all right?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
If and I've got good distance, more than 6 feet, and I won't spit on everyone. So the other thing is this hybrid meeting. I really like this. You know, I got into this as a retail kind of politician, you know, being on school boards for over 10 years, that really gets you close to the community, unlike the school boards that we're seeing now, right? I mean, even our little town of Brownsville, we live just a half hour north of Eugene, and Brownsville is one of those historic towns where they filmed Stand By Me, if you've seen that film. So it's an international tourist town too. It's pretty cute. But they just ran off the city councilwoman for 16 years. You know, and these school boards and these city councils are volunteers, just like you all are, with precinct people. So it's scary that people are, and they're just using the critical race theory and the COVID thing as an organizing tool, coast to coast, all for the 2024 presidential election. So, you know, there's got to be some big money coming from somewhere, because we like to follow the money. So, and that's one of the questions for the former Speaker of the House, is her money, you know, because we're not taking any corporate money. And I would really encourage my opponents to stop doing the same thing. So are there any questions from the virtual audience? There's another Linda. That's what, Linda Sprengler?
Spangler.
Yeah, which part of the county are you from?
I'm from Merlin, which is about 8 miles north of Grants Pass. And we have a lot of problems in Merlin, fire problems, poverty, probably maybe some bad money in dope, in marijuana.
Are you seeing
just-
the cartels coming up into your community?
Who can say? I don't know. You know, I don't know. But it's very odd, and you hear stories almost every day about strange people yelling and screaming in the bars.
Well, that's always been like that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really not
So you're a precinct person from Merlin, and you're up close to my old stomping ground, the Umpqua. And I know we have some Umpqua folks that I'm glad joined us. And
I'm near the Rogue.
but I thought you were in the north end just before you go over Summit. What's that Summit? Sexton Summit? No?
Sexton, yeah.
That's,
But,
well, that's Hugo.
yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm getting.
Merlin's like in between, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Well, did
Patrick, this is,
anybody have a question then from the?
I did. This is Tracy, and I've got a question because I've got some data that I just acquired from AllCare that shows that 42% of Josephine County are on Medicaid. That's an amazing number, and I'm concerned with that. Poverty is a public health care issue, so I'm really interested in hearing your position on healthcare for all and what you as governor would actually do about that.
Yeah, during the social time before some folks got online and got here, we were talking a little bit about our proposal is Oregon. It's the Oregon Health Plan for All, OHP for all. And because like I was a Kitzhaber fan before the scandals. And so I've always liked the Oregon Health Plan. And what we've discovered in our research is that almost 300,000 Oregonians that are working are uninsured. And the example I like to use is imagine Ashland, Medford, and Grants Pass, that those cities added up is probably not over 300,000, right? No one has health insurance. Imagine that. The gas station worker, the nurses, the teachers. So when you start looking at it like that, because they make too much to be on OHP currently, and they're not covered by their employer, and it's really expensive. My wife and I know this, to self-insure. If anybody else is self-employed, it's really tough. So your numbers are shocking. We're going to take a note of those, Devin, please. What was it, Tracy? 41% in Josephine County are Medicare.
Yeah, 41% are on Medicare, which is basically a reflection of our poverty level here in the county.
Well, and so many disabled folks too, and then so the reason we use the term, because everyone's used to the term single payer. The reason we use the term universal is because in Oregon, we're not the federal government. So we're not going to have just one payer, like Medicare. So in the OHP for all example, we're going to have all kinds of different revenue sources. We're going to have federal revenue because some of the federal revenue covers Medicare for disabled folks or seniors. And then there's some federal money that helps kids under 18. And then these two, and I was just explaining this to Jeff Golden, so I just had some good practice. These two are linked. I call it the grand bargain, OHP for all and PERS for all. Because as a carpenter and on school boards, I used to have to defend public employees all the time, especially on the job, the construction job. Oh, those public employees, they get all the good stuff, And so I would always defend them, and same way I would do on the school board. I was always an advocate for the union members and the public employees. And so over those 10 years of being on those school boards, I came up with the idea of OHP for all, which would save us money on school boards, and PERS for all, which the example I use is an upside down pyramid, because we have a very few young public employees supporting the base. We have a lot of us baby boomers leaving the public employee system. So that's why it's teetering. And so my idea is to turn it over, broaden the base to all the workers, gas station workers, restaurant workers, all the workers, after we cover their health insurance that their employer used to cover. And I use one of my favorite public or employee-owned stores is Bi-Mart. And so let's say you had 100 Bi-Mart employees that you're required to cover. And that's $1 million a year. So if you tie these together, you've just freed up that business's $1 million that now they can put into PERS for all. See? So we can have good health care covered by the state and good pensions for everyone. So if you live in Oregon, you're covered. And California just passed the Cali Care just recently. So if you want to look at an example, I was hoping to beat them to it, be the first state, but they just beat us to it. And so we have got to cover everyone. And we were talking earlier, and if folks still want a private Cadillac version, it's like universal education, right? Every kid is covered for school, but if you want to have a private school, we're not restricting that. If you still want to spend your own private dollars, but we have to start saving, because as a school board member, see, it was 40% of our school budget was private health insurance leaving the classroom and PERS, the PERS debt, not actual PERS payments to the current workers because they're paying in and they're paying, you know, but the debt because of that teetering pyramid upside down. So 40% of our dollars in the classroom are going to these things. And so if we fix that, then we can have way more teacher assistants. We can have more vocational ed programs, because you got to keep in mind, that's why Measure 98 was so important, which finally brought back some shop classes or CNA classes. Only 12% of our students go to college, graduate, and go on. So 80% of us still need CNAs and RN and mechanics. And, you know, so by freeing up this money from the private health insurance is not in favor of what I'm talking about. And we're getting the public employees there because they won't be affected. We'll just join them. So it'll be like one union, you know. So the challenge is, and this is where it gets tricky, is how do you pay for it, right? So, and I always feel responsible when I propose something to have a way to pay for it. And this is where it gets controversial, of course. Diabetes, heart disease, and obesity are three big killers. And I believe they're diet related. So I'm in favor of a sin tax like we have on tobacco and alcohol on junk food. And you can tell I like my share of junk food. So I'll hide my belly. But I'll tell you what, it'll be lower than my premium because we're self-employed. Our premiums are almost 10%. They were 10% of our income. And our deductible is $13,000. So when my wife had to have her tonsil out, it was $8,000 out of pocket. So that's what's important about OHP for all, is that no deductibles. It sounds like Bernie now. No deductibles, no copays, and no high premiums. But we'll have to pay at the pump, like they say, for all of our cholesterol, our sugar sweet stuff that we love, and our high sodium, because I have high blood pressure, so I have to watch my sodium. So it's all these things that are really putting us out, you know, and creating Tracy's point about our health, our poverty and our health issues. You know, I think they're tied together. And I hope we can talk about food deserts too, because even our little town of Brownsville, we're a half hour from any good store. I mean, we have a Dollar General, as everyone does. And we have a Dairy Mart's popular thing in the Willamette Valley. But it's not fresh groceries, you know, that are affordable. So,
There's a question on your chat.
oh, great,
Yeah.
great.
What are your thoughts on our horse racing situation in Grant's class related to the Flying Lark Racino? Are you familiar with what's going on there?
No, but if it's the Dutch Brothers thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I get asked that by the indigenous Oregonians all the time. And the question for all of us is, do we want to be Nevada? Because you can't just have one rich business be a gambling casino unless you can allow it everywhere. And I'm not interested. You know, gambling is a whole nother problem that we'd have to deal with. You know, it's just like almost every issue you can talk about, it's always about use and abuse. You know, be it alcohol, I'm Irish, so we have use and abuse. Food can be use and abuse, overeating or eating junk, like I was talking about. And same with gambling. I mean, some people can play 21 and be fine, but other people like can spend their fortune and their savings. And you have a question?
Well, I'm not necessarily for that, but in this case, it's what was already going on at Portland Meadows, the only other racetrack. And that's why they feel that they're entitled to do the same here.
Oh, so there's already an exemption?
Mhm.
Yeah, see, that's one of the problems with big money in politics. There's a lot of carve outs. We saw that with the cap and trade bill. Certain people were getting, you know, oh, everybody else has to pay, but you know, the big donors will have that exemption. So I don't know, that should be part of the Secretary of State's audit. And and like I said, if the state wants to change that dynamic, I would support the voters' choice to make Oregon a gambling state like Nevada. And does Oregon want to legalize prostitution? You know, does Oregon want to legalize, you know, every drug, you know? I mean, so these things we need to study and know those effects. My personal thing is cautionary about expanding it because of gambling addiction, you know, and just like you have to have a alcohol tax and have that money go into treatment, and same with other drugs like cannabis money, gambling money would have to go to help with that. And that's something I left out of the OHP thing that Tracy brought up. OHP for All, the important part of our plan is that it creates a special fund. It's called the Oregon Health Fund, which is not part of the general funds. Because once you get in the general fund, that's where all the, you know, the fighting goes. And then pretty soon you're like, oh, we don't have money for education, or we don't have money for healthcare because it went to pet projects. So we're going to have the Oregon Health Fund. So any of these revenues I was talking about, including the junk food tax or those other sin taxes, would go specifically into the Oregon Shelter or Oregon Health Fund. And you had a question in the back?
Yes. I'm pretty new to Oregon, so I don't know a lot about a lot of the different programs that are provided by through the state. But I'm not noticing a lot being done for the homeless.
Right.
And I was wondering what you had in mind.
Great segue. So her question, if you couldn't hear it, was she's new to the area. Whereabouts are you from?
Los Angeles.
Okay.
I was a social worker there.
Yeah, I've been there. I've stayed there for a while. She moved to the beautiful state of Oregon, and welcome home is what I like to say.
Thank you.
You know, so welcome home. And what are we going to do about homelessness? Is this common question on both sides of the aisle, and that's what I was saying about it unifying us. See, I feel like if we tackle some of these issues that have been bothering us for 20 years, like the speaker and Tobias Reed, they've been there, and here we are, right? And it's getting worse. So I'm ready for something different. I'm tired of the status quo. I don't care how long you've been doing it, you've been not doing it. So to get to your answer is, again, a separate fund called the Oregon Shelter Fund that is hands off, and it's just for not just shelters to build mini homes or whatever we decide to do, and each community can do it the way they want to do it. It would be a block grant kind of thing where we would match federal money or your local money, or even nonprofits have access to put this together. So the Oregon Shelter Fund, part of it, there are many ways we can fund it. And again, I always feel responsible to have funding for these things that we propose. And so one of the things, because my wife and I, we restore abandoned houses that are like 6 years, no one's lived in them. And then a lot of people think they're tear downs until I fix them up. And we did one in Junction City, which is out by the Eugene Airport. And now that's what brought us to Brownsville. Thought it was a rooster at first. That house we just finished was 1872. But my point is, when we travel to look at the next project, which now we're obviously on sabbatical from that, we found 100 houses abandoned around the Eugene, 30-mile area. So I know across the state, because I'm on one of these Facebook pages that's abandoned houses, and they're just gorgeous. They're beautiful old houses, and they're getting all mossy, and we need to fix them up. So what I propose is a vacancy fee and commercial buildings, like old stores that have been abandoned. And it's not just that they need to be into the mix of housing people, but they're bringing folks down in that neighborhood. In Portland, they call them zombie homes because they've been vacant for 10 years and there's spray paint and stuff. So what we're proposing is a vacancy fee that's based on the square footage. Because another thing we find is that a lot of these places are owned by out-of-state banks, Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, or just wealthy people that don't care about Oregon. And so with the vacancy fee, you put pressure on them to get with the program, fix that up, get rid of it. And if they want to walk away, the state, can take it and either put it on auction, or they can start doing this work that we want to see done, right? We're all ready.
LA's taking over a lot of property to turn into low-income housing and homeless housing.
Yeah. So we'll have the Oregon Shelter Fund. We'll have some different revenues to pay for it. Another part of the vacancy thing, there's a great letter to the editor from one of our supporters who did all this other research, because we've been focused on abandoned homes. 5% of our current rentals are vacant, which covers that 15,000 people we're talking about. So even if we didn't restore old houses like I love to do, what about the ones we already have? That some of these wealthy people just aren't, there's no rush to, and then when you get to the coast or up in the mountains where the skiing is, you get into these short-term rentals where the people at the coast that change the beds and pump the gas can't afford to live in Lincoln City because of all the Airbnb properties, So that also needs to be dealt with because that's an affordable housing issue. And the other thing I'd like to say about the housing thing is that we have some state lands that we're going to be proposing during this campaign as a project to house eco village, sustainable village. And we're not talking about like the Elliott forest with all the big, beautiful trees. We're talking about old bases like White City. That was an old military base. Now it's a city, right? So there's a question from.
Yeah, you've got a couple of people on Zoom that want to ask questions, including your Devin. So I don't know if you want him to go first.
Well, I'd like to hear the others first, if that's all right. Sorry, Devin.
And I think one was Rebecca Anderson. Asking her to unmute.
Good evening. I just wanted to say, I have been in the racing industry for over 30 some years. I rode professionally, and I actually served as vice president of Southern Oregon horse racing up here. You're looking at this in a very simplistic way. You see, when Travis got to put in this, he won the bid for racing in Oregon. He got the simulcast, and this is not my area of expertise. I am a rider. I'm not a gambler, but Oregon is a huge hub for gambling, and there's a ton of money that comes through here and is generated through that. And these are from people betting in New York and all around the world, actually. So it's a much more complex thing. And this is not going to be a casino. He's looking at having these historic racing machines, they're called. Okay. And they're not going to have tables. They're not going to have, it's a totally different deal. So the other thing is that he did all this based on the fact that they were going to get those machines in there. And now it's a big controversy. I think there are deals that can be struck with the Native Americans to bring in the Native American relay races and some other things in exchange for supporting. I have Native American roots, by the way. So bring in some of their culturally valuable events that they do. There are no relay races here. I've been talking with Calvin Ghostbeer out in the Dakotas, and they're all over the country, but they're not in Oregon. If we have racetracks and they're here, then some of the money should go to fund that. And why not let them have the machines to keep the facility? It's an extremely expensive business to support. So I'll just throw that out there. But Oregon is a huge hub for racing on the simulcast end. And
I appreciate that, Rebecca, because obviously I have a simplified version, and I do like the idea of partnerships, and I love building tables where people can come together and come up with a common solution. So let's explore that. Take a note of that, Devin, because I can meet with that person. Travis is the Dutch Brothers person. I've just been following it in the news while we've been busy traveling, so it's been sort of a side thing, but I could see in this area, it could be valuable. And then I get the feedback from the natives. So no, I'm open to building the table and partnering and talking about problem solving that if it's possible. Yeah.
And then Vicki Palmerton.
Vicki?
Yeah. Get her hand up.
My question, Patrick, was the drug addiction and treatment the incredible number of overdose deaths. In the last 6 months, I've lost my son and my sister.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
And working through this, the system is incredibly broken.
Yeah.
The agencies have a hard time working together. They can't fund enough workers. There's places like Canada, et cetera, where they have this working and we don't follow.
Working examples.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I could, this is a classic bureaucratic problem. I call it the silos. Even in our natural resources, we have the OFD and, Fish and Wildlife, and then we have the Department of Forestry, and then we have DEQ, and then they're all trying to work on the same river. Because I was on watershed councils for over 10 years. So it's like, come on, let's get it together, And so this is a different example, but I'll get to your example. I'm proposing a Department of Ecology, like Washington State has, where all these natural resources are under one umbrella, holistic, right? Because it's all part of the same system, especially when it comes to rivers and water and wildlife and stuff. So on that, health, it's always bothered me that mental health is not part of healthcare, right? And it's the stigma. So yeah, we have to tackle this by getting rid of these silos and having a holistic approach to healthcare, because OHP also doesn't cover vision and it doesn't cover dental. So it's not just that we need OHP for all, but we need to bring it up and pay and get it well funded. And that's what I hear the most, not just with mental health workers, but also the whole foster debacle, foster care thing is understaffed. So again, like I sound like Elizabeth Warren, I got a plan. So, and this is really not, this will probably bump me right out of the debates with Tina Kotek and Tobias Reed, because I believe there should be if we have to have them separate, there should be a Oregon mental health fund, because, we have so many soldiers and veterans coming back too with shell shock. That's just terrible. I mean, they have long hair now when they're sitting on your side of your freeway, but they were jarheads, they were tough, but they're really damaged folks. And so what I was saying about the Oregon mental health fund is I believe there should be some sort, and this is the legislature's job to investigate it and come up with the details of it. But I'm going to be the bully pulpit and say that we should have an advertising tax. Because when I see these magazines, like these women's magazines with all this body shaming and all this, the whole magazine is 90% ads. And guys get it too with the big truck ads and the Cabela stuff, and you got to have a gun, you got to have a big truck. So let's take a percentage, right? Talk about use and abuse. Let's take a percentage and put it away to help our folks that are struggling. I mean, we have so many bipolar folks and then that are homeless, and it goes on and on. So 2 takeaways: a holistic approach to getting rid of these silos in a way that's controversial, I'm sure, to pay for it. But most of the taxes are, right? The T word, right? But what I argue, my pushback on that is that's the cost of civilization. So if you don't want a civilization, don't have any taxes, right? Any rules. And just like our city council in Brownsville just became a sanctuary city, I was telling some folks earlier. It's like, so they don't have to follow Governor Brown's rules, I mean, it's really just talk.
Welcome to Josephine County.
Yeah, I know. It's coast to coast. It's not just an Oregon deal.
Yeah, so we
So-
should hear Devin now.
Devin, he's probably helping me.
We've only got a couple minutes left.
Right.
Don't forget we have the GMO point.
Yeah, that's my closer. Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
But there's
It has to be very quick.
yeah, it will be after her question.
I don't know how quick this would be. I'm wondering, besides DEQ, what is your action plan for climate change?
Well, it's manyfold. Again, it's going to take a lot of revenue sources to change our transportation system, to change some of our business models. The cap and trade bill of 2020 was trying to deal with the business. 2/3 of our carbon is from business. 1/3 of it's from us, driving. So we need to free up revenue for our transition of our transportation system. And I'm sorry I don't have more time, because this is another holistic issue, like I was mentioning, about food deserts, getting disabled folks to their doctor's appointments, and tying us all together. And that's why I'm studying state to state. And I was outside talking with some folks about your transportation system and its gaps. And hopefully that you're going to merge with the Rogue Valley. So I'm sorry it's a quick answer, because I have to leave you with these questions for our former speaker, because I am so proud of Josephine County of being one of the first to pass 2-to-1 GMO labeling. The whole country was going to get that ball rolling after you did that. But it was our speaker that stopped it with Senate Bill 863. You need to research that. It's just a paragraph long. The state will be in charge of seeds, no local authority. So when you had that ruling that kicked your measure out, and again, you had a cutout for Jackson County, right? So I just want you to ask her what happened with the GMO bill 863. We call it, environmentalists call it the Monsanto Protection Act. It's like they wrote it and they said, we need you to nip this in the bud, because we don't want 3,000 counties doing the same thing. But thumbs up to you all for passing that. And then some of you went to try to pass it statewide. And then just general questions, we have a list of all of her corporate donations. It's like, it's got to stop, right? Corporations are not people. We just want voters to donate. And the person with the most small donations, which may not be $40 million like the last governor's race, but it'll be sufficient. Because when you look at the chart of the governor's races, the money trend, in 98, it was like 2 million to run for governor, to both candidates. And Brown and Bueller is 40 million. And we don't want this one to be, on that trend. So campaign finance reform, as you probably know, is our biggest hurdle, because then we can have these other solutions to these other issues because you've got developers, you got the real estate lobby, you've got a lot of different groups pushing on Salem. So
Okay, well, thank you,
Thanks.
Patrick.
thanks.
Great to join us in person.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay,
Good
now you gotta
question.
put that mask back on.
Yeah. I'll
Okay,
join the audience.
we're gonna go into the business part of our meeting, which always starts with the approval of the previous minutes, which I know that our secretary, Linda Dempster, gave it to me very quick last time, and we got it up. And I'm not gonna ask who read them, but do we have any changes to the minutes? Any, do I have a motion to approve them? Okay, are there any objections to approving last month's minutes?
No.
Okay, thank you. Colette,
Oh, okay.
you want to do the treasurer's report?
Sure.
So we made money last month. Yay, yay. Okay, and we're actually up $2,000 from where we were projected to be by the end of 2021, which is great for our upcoming battles in 2022. And we got some money from the DPO, Democratic Party of Oregon, for texting campaign. We put in a grant that was, thank you, Dorothy, and thank you, Patty Downing, and most of all, thank you, Jerry Ventura, for orchestrating and implementing it in May of last year. So that's all I've got to say.
Okay.
Any questions?
I want to thank everybody who's been donating. We've had
Yes.
some very large donations, and then we have the people that give us $5 to $10 a month, which it adds up to us.
It does.
Because we are going to have some campaigns starting with the May primary.
Mhm.
Got to get a good commissioner candidate out there. Next up is Joe Stadola on our Zoom, is going to be giving us a update on the local mining. You there, Joe?
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, let's see if we can get him on spotlight.
Let's see.
Hello.
We hear you.
Oh, it really doesn't matter.
There you go. You're up.
Okay, fine. So I'm Joe Studola. I'm the chair for the Environmental Caucus for Josephine County Democrats. And the mining issue came up after seeing an article in the Sneak Preview, a little local paper about AMR, American Mineral Research, mining or proposing to do some tellurium mining in Josephine County. So that was around, I don't know, July of August of last year. And that immediately became a object on our agenda. And we started, we kind of put a little task force together with different aspects of it, law, geology, etc. And we've been working on that since. So we quickly found out that tellurium mining is a byproduct of typically open pit copper mining. So that sent up some big red flags to us. You know, as soon as you say open pit, you just imagine this big giant moon-like crater in Josephine County, and that just seemed very not appealing. So we started digging into it. This AMR, American Mineral Research, their claim is that they would be doing very minimal footprint mining of this tellurium, which doesn't make any sense because, like I just said, and it's been verified by a geologist and by the person that controls and issues permits for mining in Josephine County, and it's a byproduct of large copper refinery, copper mining. So something didn't seem right. So we just started digging into that. Then the next thing we did is once we all had assignments, Linda Spangler, who's on the meeting, and I attended one of the mining advisory committee meetings because the person that represents AMR, who's Jay Meredith, was there. And we just wanted to kind of get educated on mining. I don't know how much time I have, Dorothy.
Just a couple of minutes.
Couple of minutes? Oh, okay. I'll make the speedy version. Anyway, it's a very interesting process. So we went to that meeting. I got a chance to talk to Jay Meredith, and I asked several questions, such as, who is he going to be selling the tellurium to? And by the way, tellurium sells for $78 a kilo. So not very much money there. And just a whole bunch of really weird things about, he doesn't have a milling process in place, but he wants to dig for tellurium, supposedly. So I spoke to Dave Streeter, just to kind of shortcut that. And he's in charge of mining here in Josephine County. He's a Josephine County person. I asked him how much money the county receives from mining. And he said that there's no money in it. He also said that from permitting, the county has received something like 360, and I thought, oh, 360,000? No, $360. So I'm like, Wow, well, that's great. Not very much money in this mining. Also, AMR claims that they will take the royalties from their Tellurium mining and put it into law enforcement, which is kind of a hot button issue locally here. Well, Dave said that the person providing the royalties does not dictate where the money goes. That's done by the Board of Commissioners. Of course, the commissioners we have, who knows what they would do with it. They probably just give themselves a raise if there was any money to be made. Then I talked to David Hembry. He's a geologist, and I'll kind of wrap it up with that. He said locally here, he's a very well certified geologist. Locally here, there is no gold, there is no tellurium. The only mining in Josephine County is sand and gravel. That's it. Yeah, so you know, that kind of he kind of puts the final touches on it. He said in the 1800s, yeah, gold was kind of laying around on the ground and was easy to get. But so at one point we thought maybe AMR was going to be going after gold, but using tellurium as a kind of greenwashing their project, and then using the law enforcement as a kind of a dog whistle, because that's something we're lacking. But in reality, I'm not sure where this is going to end up. I don't want to seem kind of harsh, but it almost seems like it's just some kind of a collecting money for some kind of a, you know, from investors for a project that would probably never get off the ground. But that's about where we are with that. So the whole reason for us going into this mining issue was because of tellurium and the way that tellurium is actually mined, which is like an open pit, and that just wasn't going to happen here. But I don't think I think at the end we'll just find that there's actually nothing there. But
Commissioners also gave them permission to mine on public land, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And they've actually cost the county somewhere between $13,000 and $33,000. You know, overall is what David Hembry said. So they're not very happy with them, and I will continue to pursue this with David Hembry's assistant. So that's kind of it.
Okay. I think we'll probably have a meeting in the future that's going to highlight the situation with mining here. Because it is, although it sounds like the commissioners have lost the sparkle in their eye regarding Jay Meredith, but it can always come back. The other thing that commissioners are going on about recently, if you have been following them, is about having an ordinance, or I forget what, something in which they're going to state that we're a sanctuary county regarding gun laws. Right. And I think we have the chair over here who is our chair of our gun owners caucus. I want to stress the word owner, because we are, all the people in the caucus own guns. We don't want them overly regulated. We just want common sense rules as to who gets them and how you store them and so on. So maybe in the future, Brady, you don't have to say anything today, but maybe in the future, we'll have some updates. And maybe we'll have an action as the commissioners continue to go on about this, because I look at it like this. Being a sanctuary county is already in our county charter, and it has been determined through legal means that it's invalid. So now we're going on about it again, and it's a waste of our tax dollars, plain and simple. That's Dorothy's view. So with that, do we have?
We don't have Tina yet.
Okay, we're waiting for Tina to come on board with us. So we could
mention that meeting about the urban campground.
Oh, go ahead, you know something.
Yeah.
Mention it.
Yeah, okay, I will. Let me pull it up real
Okay, so on January 19th at 12 o'clock at the Grants Pass Bethany Presbyterian Church, 731 Northwest 4th Street. There's going to be a community get-together to discuss the Urban Campground and what's going on with it. Doug Walker, a board member of the ACC Foundation, will share current details to develop a safe, supervised living space in Grants Pass. So you can bring your questions, you'll get up-to-date facts and become part of the solution. So that's January 19th at noon at the Grants Pass Bethany Presbyterian Church.
Okay. Well, while we wait and hopefully.
Dorothy,
Yes.
Dorothy,
Yes?
I'd like to say a few words about our education forum that we've put together. When we had our executive meeting a couple weeks ago, we started talking about the situation with education, and what at least my feeling was that myself and a few others were rather in the dark about what's really going on in education. So I reached out to a couple of educators, Bob Bath and some others, and we're going to have like a 90-minute forum on Wednesday, February 9th. That's, yeah. And we're gonna have our questions answered and get a sense about what's really going on in the schools with the kids and COVID and all the crazy political stuff. Hopefully we won't get too into that because it's just mind-boggling. But just to get a sense of how the kids are doing. So I hope everybody can tune in. That'll be on Zoom, February 9th at 6 o'clock. All right. And we'll put it out in the newsletter and stuff. Thanks.
So that is going to take the place of our February meeting, right?
No,
No, it's going to be in addition to the February meeting?
that's
It's
what I thought,
Wednesday.
because I thought we didn't want to have it. Well, we can't have it on Tuesday because that's a school board meeting.
Right. Okay, well, I'll talk to you later. So,
All righty.
all right. Because that would be very close to because we always meet traditionally on the second Tuesday of the month. And that might be the day after the regular meeting. So who knows? We might
Yeah,
move it.
it would be actually. It
Yeah.
would be. Yeah.
Okay, so while we wait for,
Oh, here she is.
she's here. Terrific.
Hey, Dorothy,
Yes.
you want to put a plug in for the Adopt a Highway road?
Oh, good point. Brian, yell it out.
Yeah, this Sunday, 11 o'clock, we're cleaning the highway again, so go up to Hubbard Lane, up 199 by the college, make a left at Hubbard Lane, and then the first right that you come to, and we meet there, and we clean the road, and it takes about 2 hours to do it, so Sunday, 11 to 2, or 11 to 1, 11 to 2 about, okay?
Okay, so you can always email me, chair@josephinedemocrats.org, and I'll make sure that you get on the list for Brian to harass, to make sure that you're there. Anyway,
Ask Tina to unmute.
speaker, or I guess no longer speaker Kotek is joining us. Where is she?
I'm coming.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
I am changing my name. For until next Friday, I'm still the Speaker of the House. Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's get you full screen over here and welcome. I am thrilled that you are joining us. It is a rare day that folks from Northern Oregon join us, Southern Oregon people. So I hate to say that, but okay. And Vicky, you laugh a lot, so please mute. Okay. All right. So Speaker Kotek, thank you very, very much for joining us. And I'll just let you take it from here. And then I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions.
Well, thank you, everyone. Good evening. I know the hour is late and you've had all a long day, but thank you for the invitation to join you tonight. I am Tita Kotek, currently the state representative in North Portland. I'm calling you from my home in North Portland tonight. I represent that district just before you go into Vancouver, Washington. And so a little far away. And I hope you're all doing well and staying as healthy and safe as possible. I'm here tonight to talk with you about being a Democratic candidate for governor in this year's May primary. And it's a pleasure to be here. I know that Democrats across the state work really hard in their local parties to, like I say, spread the good news about what Democrats believe in and what they're trying to do to improve the world. So appreciate each and every one of you. I have been a state representative since 2007. I've been Speaker of the House for the last 9 years. And I decided to take this new journey to be governor of our beautiful state, because I think it's very important for this state and Oregonians to have a experienced progressive leader to be our next governor. Things are not easy. The world has many challenges. And yet I know this state has a lot of hope and aspirations of what we can do together as a state to grow and make sure everyone can have access to success and opportunity. And I'd like to be your next governor. As I start off on this path of thinking about doing this type of campaign, I think we all think about, well, how did we get here, right? When we think about our lives and life changes. I've been doing advocacy in Oregon for the last 20 plus years. I moved to Oregon in 87, came back in 98, and have been here ever since. But 20 years ago, one of the things that really changed my life and put me on this definitive path of public service is I went to work for Oregon Food Bank. And my job was not to move food. My job was to reduce hunger. And so I would travel around the state, visiting folks in food pantries and interviewing and sitting in focus groups and listening to the stories of folks who were having trouble buying their own food. And it wasn't about that there wasn't food available, because it's about an income issue. This was people who were saying, I have a job and I don't make enough money. Or I work 2 or 3 jobs and still don't have enough money. My rent's too much. I have medical debt because I didn't have health insurance and I had an illness. I can't afford my childcare. I have all these things that at the end of the day, the only thing I can do is go get a food box. And all of those things have stuck with me over the years of ways that the system doesn't work for people, that we can create an Oregon where people, those types of barriers are removed so they can be successful and not have to go and get an emergency food box. I went to work from Oregon Food Bank to Children First Oregon, doing public policy work around children's issues, children's health insurance or foster care issues, or making sure working families had access to childcare. Those are the things that I took into the legislature when I first joined the legislature and have been working on those issues ever since. I think it's not just enough to talk about your values and the things you want to do. It's whether or not you have the skills and the experience to get the job done. And over the years, no matter how complicated the topics, trying to bring people together, hear about the challenges, identify solutions, and put those solutions into place by passing meaningful legislation. So over the years, I've led the way to improve the lives of Oregonians in a whole host of ways, whether it was increasing the minimum wage or making sure people had access to paid sick leave, or when it gets totally set up, a really strong paid family and medical leave insurance program. It's been about housing, working on it from a variety of angles, from new shelters to home ownership and everything in between, because we are still in the midst of a housing crisis. It's about making sure people have access to health insurance. When I first started doing this work, we were trying to make sure kids had access to health insurance. Now every child has that ability to have access to health insurance, and all adults too, after just having passed Cover All People at the 21 legislative session. So I feel like we are making such good progress, and yet those promises have to be completely carried through. Nothing's ever done. I never rest for the status quo. We have to keep working and moving forward. And so I would be honored to have the support of Democrats in Josephine County to be your next governor. There is much to do, and I think working together, we can get a lot done for our state. So thank you for the opportunity to say a few words, and I'm open to questions and love to know what you want to know. So thank you.
Okay, anybody in the room have questions before I go? Yes, Sherry.
I had a question of what your opinion is about our illegal cannabis that we have in this county.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, you are ground zero for some very difficult problems. And I think many of you know that in the December special session that we just had right before Christmas, we were there primarily to deal with the extension of the safe harbor for folks who are waiting for rent assistance. But we also invested in a sizable drought package, and we took the first steps of giving more resources and tools for the state and local partners to deal with illegal grows. I mean, none of us wanted this, right? One of the goals of having legal adult use of cannabis was to reduce the black market and reduce criminal activity. And you are in the midst of a really terrible problem. And I would say, I don't think it's just local government and it's not the state. We need more federal support. So I do think we need support from the feds down through the local government. And hopefully with the steps we took in both the 21 session and the special session we just had to really focus on these things and not just the illegal nature of these grows, but how people, the workers who are being mistreated, the water that's being stolen. And my guess is we will be back with additional resources and tools in the session that starts on February 1st. We knew in the special session last year, it was just a start. But one of the things I would ask is that, feel free to communicate with my campaign team about additional things that you think we need to be doing, and hopefully when I start getting on the road a little more later in the year, come down and talk to you about it in person. Because sometimes you can't really totally understand until you get there and see it on the ground.
Thank you.
And my campaign manager, Megan Kavanaugh, is on the line, and she just put in the chat where you can email suggestions, questions, or follow-up. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone you can raise your hand on Zoom for a question. If not, I have one. Go for it. Okay, I think there was a lot of activity done regarding wildfire in and there was, as a matter of fact, I'm in the process right now of finishing up a request for a grant for my Firewise community. And I think that was part of SB something or another. And there's also things related to a lot of money to beef up fire departments, as I understand. Josephine County is kind of interesting because we have half of this county does not have a fire district. What can our state legislature or the governor do to have us get a fire district in this county? The people will not vote for it because it's a tax.
A locally supported fire district, yes. Yeah, that's got to be hard to set up a new one, I would bet. Thank you for that question. Yeah, it was Senate Bill 762. It was one of the last bills we finished up in the 21 session because it was so comprehensive and complicated. And it had everything from how do we set norms going forward about development and what's a safe space in very fire-prone, risky areas. I think there was a lot of confusion that some of these things would apply to any place in rural Oregon. That wasn't true. It was like you had to be in a high-risk area and you had to meet certain criteria, and then there will be a process to work on building codes and other types of things to mitigate when, unfortunately, large wildfires will happen again. I think that's a factor, as you all know, of climate change, drought conditions, weather changes. Unfortunately, we have to be better prepared. So a lot of it is about mitigation and prevention of protecting property and people when these things happen. And that just needs to happen, right? We're in this for the long haul. There was also money there for increasing emergency response and things like that. And I think probably where you'll benefit from is increased resources and technical expertise for the fire marshal, state fire marshal, for the Department of Forestry and how they address on the ground fires. So much more of an emergency management response apparatus that we haven't had in the past. That hopefully will help areas of the state like the one you're talking about, Josephine County, that has less of local fire response. And we're certainly open to more. I think the overall package was around, will be $400 to $500 million over the biennium. So it was pretty substantial. And there's also things to do about protecting forests from thinning efforts in certain areas and things like that. But not thinning, but clearing out the underbrush and things like that. So I think the prevention will help, but if we have unattended parts of the state, we probably need to have a conversation with the fire marshal, what else we can do to help keep communities safe, because the fire that happened in Phoenix and Talent, the speed at which that moved, I think is the new norm. And so we have to do everything we can to prevent as well as fight them when they actually do occur.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'd like to hear what your plan is for reducing carbon emissions, both public and private.
Did you hear it about reducing carbon emissions? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, we've made some progress in Oregon. One of the signature bills from the 2021 session was House Bill 2021, 100% clean electricity, to move us forward in terms of electricity generated for the state into clean sources by 2040. So that, I feel like we've made substantial amount of progress in our utility sector, moving off of coal generation by 2030, moving towards 100% clean by 2040. Super important in terms of also additional investments in electrification in the transportation sector. So as folks move into zero emission vehicles through state and federal subsidies and motivation to have that next vehicle be a cleaner vehicle, we need to make sure people can charge conveniently, whether in public space or at home. I think the next iteration of emission reductions really need to be focused on continuing to reduce emissions in the transportation sector. It's a big part of the emissions in our state. That's obviously looks different in different parts of the state. In Portland, that's trying to get more people on transit. That's not quite the same probably just because. I think cleaner homes and buildings, and how do you make that transition to homes that are less dependent on fossil fuels and the emissions that go along with that. I have been supporting what the governor's been doing in the climate action program through agency rulemaking and work there, and as your next governor would support that. So the reality for reducing emissions is you have to do it all, and you also have to conserve, right? Use less. So it's a combination of things, and I'd be curious if there's something specific that could be, that we should focus on in a more rural county like Josephine County that we could be helpful. Because I think everyone has to do their part. Honestly, the metro area, a few more people, more emissions. We got to walk our talk up here, but what we can be doing in other parts of the state is also important. So any ideas, send them my way.
Go ahead.
Going back to the wildfire question, an individual landowner, what they can do on their land is really important. But I think what's been demonstrated by these recent fires is that it's communities, it's groups of landowners. And around here, the big landowners are the feds, the BLM and the Forest Service. And it kind of gets back to your answer about the cannabis question too. It involves the feds. So I'm wondering, as governor, how would you get the federal government interested? Because they seem to be pretty busy doing other things right now.
Yeah, they're not great neighbors, right? That, plain and simple. They don't take care of the property as well as they should. Some of that's been budget reductions, and probably under the previous administration, less of it, an incentive to do anything. So as governor, I'd have the ability to work directly with our congressional delegation to, try to work at the federal level. But we have to develop a different partnership with our federal landowners. As that's such a big chunk. State forests are a small part of it. Private landowners are a big part, but the feds, when you're sitting right next to their property and how they manage their fires impacts everybody else, and particularly along near places where people live. So maybe we just start in a very targeted way, because you're not going to be able to do all of federal forest land. But clearly, when you have that interface with residential or close residential, we have to have a different plan. So as governor, I would work directly, with our federal delegation and with the president and say, look, we got to fix this. Maybe we'll have that option over the next couple of years, but it definitely has been slow to get fixed.
Okay, do you have,
So, Devin, Boston?
Hey, Tina, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So, one thing I've noticed with other candidates, Oregon and nationwide, one of their values are expanding voting rights. And as important as I think expanding voting rights for everyone, and specifically for Black communities and people of color who are being restricted from getting out to vote, I feel like we've forgotten about the youth. And I was wondering what your stance on lowering the voting age to 16 was.
Oh, thank you for the question, Devin. And we're lucky to live in Oregon, right? We do everything we can to improve voter access versus suppression, which you're seeing in other states, which is absolutely terrible. So we're quite fortunate. I think in terms of engaging the youth vote, we do allow people to, I believe, register at 16, but yes, they can't vote at 16. I'll be honest, I don't know where I stand. I see the value of expanding the right to vote at a younger age. Because certainly we have a lot of engaged individuals who, frankly, it's their future. So they should be, part of the decision making. I have seen some models where the idea is, do you allow for that maybe in certain elections first, like local elections, like school board elections, and then move up from there and test how that works. Are you aware if other states have that level of lower age on the voting? I don't think so. I think our registration was at least an attempt to say, let's get you registered so when you do hit 18, you're already in the queue. But I don't know. I'd have to think about some more, but I appreciate the question.
there may be something to research. It's, we've got a lot of great high schoolers here that are very involved actively.
So Linda Spangler?
Okay, Linda Spangler is next.
First off, I want to thank you for your work in the legislature, particularly the last session that funded some pot eradication money, and also the water master. That's going to be tremendously helpful to us down here. But and you already touched on it a little bit, Governor Brown's executive order to reduce carbon and improve waste in the state departments, transportation, all that. How would you continue to execute that plan, or would you?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And you're welcome. I'm glad we've made some progress in the last year on some important issues locally. Yes, I would support the Oregon Climate Action Plan that I believe just had final approval, at least parts of it from the EQC. It is really important. And I think the next governor has to maintain it. And I don't think you have to look very far. We have certain candidates for governor who would not do that. I would support it. I am endorsed by the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. I believe climate is a top priority for the next governor to maintain and protect what we're doing and continue to be creative and bring people along to what we all have to be doing, which is take responsibility to reduce the emissions and the other activities that are lending itself to climate change. So yeah, I think the fact that the state agencies have been directed to do as much as they can within the authority of the governor is important. We just can't wait. We have to keep pushing forward.
Yeah. And it seems as though some of the governor's executive orders really haven't filtered down to Southern Oregon. I'm thinking particularly about diesel, that there was a huge pushback around her diesel orders. You have any ideas about how we can maybe move ahead on that?
That's a really good question. I was active in the efforts that we made in 2019 to pass the clean diesel bill. And because of the politics of the legislature, we did narrow those clean engine requirements to the metro area. at least to get started. It was very difficult to negotiate for the entire state. It was like, okay, let's at least focus in the metro area first. Let's put some resources through the Volkswagen settlement directly to getting companies to move into cleaner engines. I would like to see that effort extended to other parts of the state. I mean, the Medford area in particular, I honestly don't know what the air quality is in Josephine County, but in Jackson County, the Medford area, they have a lot of air quality problems, and they need this as well to help. And I think it is about providing incentives and resources to companies. You can't just go down the street and buy a new truck. You got to plan for it. It takes a little time. It doesn't happen overnight, but we do need to get newer, cleaner engines out there. Diesel pollution is an important health hazard that we have to deal with. And I'm glad the metro areas moved forward, but there are other parts of the state that also need that help. So hopefully we can have that conversation of growing what we've done in metro area to apply to other larger populated areas in the state.
Tracy Thompson?
Yeah, sure. So I really appreciate you being here and talking with us. So healthcare is my issue. I'm a strong supporter of single payer healthcare, but one of the things people don't realize is that poverty is a primary driver of healthcare. There are data that show that things like poverty increases inflammation biomarkers. Now, Josephine County has not really benefited from the economic recovery. So the issue is, given the level of poverty we have in this county, what is your position on economic development, and what can the state do to help bring Josephine County out of the extractive economies that we've had in the past and bring it into the 21st century?
Thank you for that question. And I agree. The health of a community isn't just related to, do you have health insurance in a hospital? It's so many other things, education, housing, things like that. So, and we do have to have a broader look at that. I do believe if you are an economically diverse in terms of people's ability to work and earn a good living wage, it really does lift the entire health of the community. You know, you're in this weird spot with cannabis, right? Because on the one hand, it's created this, there's a growing industry that we want to support nationally because we want to be proud of that product, but it's got to be done legally. So we'll just set that one aside. But, you know, one of the things that I am really interested in seeing is those other types of industries that can reach around the state. I'm supporting a study to grow the organic industry, not just organic agriculture for food, but other types of organic products, because they're so quintessentially Oregon. And as an export product, can really grow jobs in communities around the state. Things like how we utilize the film and video industry that has really grown over the years, so we can get more productions in rural parts of the state. We passed legislation a few years ago to say, if you use our film and video tax incentive here in the state as a production company, and you shoot in a more rural area, you will get an extra benefit if you do that. And so what we're seeing is 2-week shoots in places around the state. You bring in a 2-week movie shoot, it's a lot of money, it's direct. And if we could build the ability to shoot in all the beautiful places of our state, that's an industry we want to promote, because less impact in terms of extractive, but that creative industry where people can get good jobs and do wonderful things. I think one of the things we have to focus on, and Representative Marsh from Ashland's been doing a lot of this, is really got to keep pushing on the federal resources on broadband. It'll be very difficult to diversify the economies in many parts of our state unless we have reliable broadband. And again, I'm not totally sure about there, but I would assume you have places where you don't have reliable broadband. And so that doesn't allow people to bring in other types of industries. Remote work is here to stay, but if you can't have that access via the internet, you're going to be competitively behind. So money's on the way, there's a plan on the way. And that I think is going to transform many parts of our state to give them more options at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Related to broadband, I'm in one of those areas that broadband is very difficult to get a hold of. I've been through 4 companies and I was out for 2 days because of the snow, which, because I have a dish and a tree that goes to a hilltop. But, and I also pay about 3 times as much for it's just ridiculous how much money I pay for it, but I'm willing to pay for it. I can afford it, but not many people can, the amount of money. So, you know, I see in the county, I've gotten requests 3 times to fill out a survey, same survey. I just hope that there is something, I don't know how the money is going to be distributed. And I just don't want our local politicians to somehow corrupt the use of that money, and not really give what we need in the rural areas. So that's all I want to say on that. I don't know if other people agree with me.
I appreciate that feedback. Think about it. And one of the things we started in the pandemic is to make sure, you know, it's like what it used to have a landline, right? Everyone assumed you had to have a landline or a phone bill so you can get, you know, some type of help to pay for those things. Well, people need help paying their internet bill, right? Especially when you have a non-competitive environment where you have like one provider who's charging through the nose, right? So we've got to get more access, more competitiveness will lower the price. There's $120 million that we approved last year that's in the works with a plan, and there's more money coming from the federal government. And Representative Marsh has another bill this session to continue to hone in on what the state will do to lead that conversation, because there's not an obvious, it's not something any county is necessarily prepared to do. So the state really does need to step in and give some direction and put the money in a certain place. Also working with the private sector to build that capacity.
Really great. Other questions? Yes, Carrie.
I'll let her catch her breath and get a drink.
Of course, I wouldn't be drinking water if I were you, but.
It's still water. I'm not, it's almost still water. So
So a hot topic in politics these days is the money. And so what are your views and how are you going to deal with campaign finance reform and getting these big PACs and this big money out of politics so that all of us little people, that our votes actually do count and do mean something to those of you that are wanting to do these higher offices and represent us?
yes, thank you. Campaigns have gotten expensive every year I've been in this job. And it just, you know, more ways to reach voters, costs go up. I do support campaign contribution limits, campaign finance reform. You know, we've done a lot with transparency and, you know, your ability to track what people give to candidates, but we do need limits. I mean, we passed the bill in the Oregon House in 2019 to have contribution limits. And unfortunately, it didn't get through the Oregon Senate. And we moved and sent the ballot measure to voters last year for the constitutional change, passed overwhelmingly. Now there's no legal question about our ability to do limits. If we don't see something successful at the ballot next year, we'll be back in 23 with this issue. I will fully support that. We need to get there. It is a little difficult when I'm competing with folks who are raising a lot of money from out of state. There have to be limits within reason. You got to be able to run a campaign, but you know, the type of money that's flowing into our state is one of the last unregulated states in terms of limits. Is we've got to deal with it for sure.
Anyone else? Here?
Right. I have another question if no one else wants to go. Well, you mentioned Pam Marsh and of course Jeff Golden, both from Jackson County. And I feel like they are doing a fabulous job getting resources and innovation into their county. And sadly, our county has people that really don't see those innovations as something that we need in Josephine County. And I often feel sort of like an abandoned child. Do you have any ideas about what we can do aside from getting, you know, voting them out, which may be a real heavy lift?
I do think it's a challenge with the voter registration in your part of the state. But it is important, and I'm gonna put my Oregon legislature hat back on. It is important to have Republican incumbents challenged at the ballot. For people to run in these particularly legislative races, you know, there are new districts now with redistricting. Districts look a little different. So I think some people will be talking to voters for the first time. I always appreciate folks in communities like yours who are running against, you know, Republican incumbents in difficult districts, but it does change the debate. If it forces incumbents and people running in the other party to talk about issues that they might not talk about. And it's also important to support Democrats from other parts of the state because we can, you know, move on those issues in the legislature in some ways easier than you can locally. But I don't have any really brilliant ideas there. I will say that as the speaker, I've worked really hard to work with all my colleagues across the aisle. I mean, I've always felt like as speaker, I'm the speaker for the whole state, not just my district in North and Northeast Portland. The divisiveness has gotten harder over the years, but I just think we all have to work harder. I just put my head down and be like, okay, I guess I have to have one more conversation about why this is important and how can we work together to help your district? I think I've really enjoyed working with Republicans who are like, look, this is what I need for my district. These are things that aren't partisan. I'm like, well, let's work on it, right? There's going to be issues we never agree on. But I think what we do agree on is making sure our communities have what they need to be successful. And I think you saw that in the response to the historic wildfires in 2020. I mean, we all came together and say, let's have a committee, let's figure this out. What do these communities need? Let's not leave them hanging. And I am not going to forget the communities. It's going to take years to recover, particularly in the hardest hit areas like Jackson County, to recover in housing and other economic basics. And we just can't forget people. We got to keep working hard. I think there are ways for us to work in a nonpartisan fashion on things that matter. And so that's where I always like to focus. Try to work on the things that's not a partisan issue, and hopefully we can work together because some things are just we're never gonna agree. So
Yep. Thanks.
We do have a question about, are you familiar with the racino that's being built in Josephine County?
Are you referring to the Flying Lark?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. I am aware of the controversy about not the racetrack necessarily, but the facility next to it and adjacent to it that is looking to have additional gambling. Yeah, it's I personally, and I've spoken with Mr. Borsman about the need to take a pause and make sure what changes are happening in the state don't necessarily impact the tribal revenue that is attached to the gambling that they are, permitted to have on their land. It's a very complicated topic. I will say that the legislature hasn't had a reset conversation about gambling in general in the state in a long time. And I think this is a perfect example of are we making the right choices as it relates to this facility for the whole state? And hopefully we can get it figured out. I know it's gotten very contentious.
Okay. Any other questions on the internet?
Devin Lawson. has his
Any
hand
other
raised.
further questions here?
Devin Lawson has his hand raised.
Okay, Devin?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I don't want to come off as rude, but I was wondering how you can be a supporter to campaign finance reform and why you're saying it's an issue that needs to be solved when you have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for your campaign. I mean, it just looks like you're a typical politician telling us our issues and not advocating to solve them.
Devin, I don't take offense to that at all. I think we have to change the laws. And as someone who believes in running for governor because I feel like I have something to offer, I have to be able to be competitive. Right now, there are no contribution limits. But the biggest contributors to me are people that, for example, labor unions are folks who, pool their money to support people. Those are pooled individual small donors to support candidates like me. I'm not taking any fossil fuel money. I think that's an important commitment, but until everyone is working by the same rules, I feel like I need to fight as hard as I can to win this race. And that means talking to voters, and that means raising money. So, and I do appreciate your frustration with that. And I mean, that's just the reality of the world right now.
Okay, any other questions? I did see at the beginning that you said something about you're gonna be making in-person visits to counties.
I'm hoping to, I think COVID permitting and obviously weather, so when the weather gets a little better, so I don't get caught in some snowstorm. But yes, I'm hoping to get on the road. I think it's really important to hear people in their communities.
Yeah.
To really get a good sense. I've been lucky. My jobs, not just in the legislature, but at Oregon Food Bank and Children First, I've traveled a good portion of our state. But so I'm familiar with a lot of places, but it's not the same thing as coming back and say, what's going on the ground? Let's see what's happening. Let me hear what you're thinking. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So I hope to see you in person sometime this year. So
Because we have been meeting in person. I don't know, you probably can't see us, but we got how many of us? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 people in the room here today. And 27 counting you on Zoom. We've been doing hybrid meetings for several months now. We're all masked up and vaccinated up, so we feel pretty reasonably safe on meeting like this. But when you do come, drop me a note, jared.josephine.democrats.org, and we do have a local Democrat motel owner that I have a feeling will be.
I think I saw something in the chat. Absolutely. I want to stay at the local places. So yeah, thank you. And hope to see you sometime soon. Appreciate the time tonight. Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us. Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Have a good one.
Thanks. Okay, everybody. So thank you to Tina. Thank you to Patrick. I think there were other people who were thanking us on the chat line. That's about it for today. I do want to point out that we are going to be starting our drive for getting precinct committee people. I'm going to a training on how to ask all of you how to be PCPs sometime this week. But you'll be hearing from me. What is a precinct committee person? There's lots of things that you can do as a PCP, but the single most important thing is that you have a voice in your own party. So that when it comes around to voting on things, especially for officers, come the end of this year, you get to vote. Nobody else gets to vote, but you get to vote. So if you have a problem with the Democratic Party, this is what you need to do, is become a PCP and be part of it and change it to improve it. So I hope everybody in this room will consider being a PCP. We need to up our ranks here. Any other questions, comments? Anybody over there? Okay.
Can I make just a statement? It's not
Sure.
very political. Being a former secretary of a very red county, Douglas County, I forgot earlier when I made my comments that I really appreciate the rural Democrats that live at the end of the road. They keep putting up their sign regardless of their neighbors, and all of you too.
And it gets stolen.
Yeah, 'cause
Awesome.
I haven't lived in Portland. I know what that's like to put your sign up and to just keep the fight. So rural Democrats are huge, and that's why we're traveling to
Yeah,
all the
that's
rural
great.
Democrats. So
Thank you.
Just
Thank you
wanted to
for
thank
doing
you.
that. Yeah, I know, I even got into trouble putting up a sign supporting the fire district.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's probably what turned off my neighbor to me. Okay, anything else? I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We'll stop the recording, and this will be probably up on our website within 48 hours. So anybody wants to take a look at it. So thank